What's going down, everyone? And today we're going to be looking at Godfall, and Gearbox is giving us some great installment initiative, and quite frankly that is what's needed. I always like Gearbox games for that. They give us queue reports, what they're doing and what they're going to give to us. So today we'll be looking at the 2.3.15, our brand new patch that comes in from all the consoles and what we'll be pushing forward with. On top of that, what we'll be looking for highlights will be quality of life improvements from the players, looking at the large number of bugs being resolved, and optimization of the stability. My name is Mac here at the MacGyver7 channel, and today we'll be looking at Godfall's game-related news. So let's go ahead and hop into it. Woo-wee, it would be an understatement to say what the list of general performance and fixes that are about to ensue. They go on to say some pretty cool stuff and very heart-filled stuff, and I encourage people that want to know more about Gearbox and what they're doing to read this full article that is directly up here that gives you all this cool stuff about 2021 and the content they're trying to get to. A lot of cool stuff, but we're going to get to the general performance on all the platforms. And we're going to skim through a lot of this stuff and look at the highlight points. And again, I will have this link down below for most people. Now, one of the cooler things that came into this was with a mass salvage. Most people would want this because you want to get rid of a whole bunch of gear at the same time. Now, players can now tag gear with salvage or favorite marked, currently equipped with the Valor plate to continue to lock, or you can have your favorite in lock tags that cannot be salvaged. Well, now this is going to have also on top of that a salvage tag that will be able to disassemble when you are choosing to salvage all. Pretty interesting. I like to think that that was a nice addition to it and a very nice highlight to what they could have been more expensive hopefully down the road with the portion of deassembling and reassembling. I like it. It's a tinkerer's like paradise. But looking at past that, they solve a lot of issues from amulets, rings, charms, and augments from the secondary traits where they were not increasing when upgraded to level 3 in that ranking. On top of that, the secondary traits would not upgrade properly when upgrading the items to rank 5. So apparently 4 and all those, 2 and 1 were fine. It's the odd numbers that are out, I guess. But solved also various issues that could cause some hitches and some stutters. Remembering the portion of the reminders of the name text on the tower trail icon, and they included a field of view slider. Solved issues for as far as the input buffering inside of where the buttons were held, weapons, techniques, blocking that would not register properly. Increased the windows of opportunities to buff utilizing the lifestone during combat and animation. Now the other one is alluded where it's highlighted is for what's more towards the bottom, and they'll get into that for the end of the patch notes, but we're going to skim over that like a happy accident and paint ourselves a nice portion of improved frame rate and issues that are utilizing the portion of the Archon Fury, the Summons Sentinel. It solved an issue for as far as the Archon Fury damage that affects not the accurately displayed portion for the correct values. It also came down to the Luna's AOE grab would cancel when the player's Archon Fury early. Improve the weapon techniques in the HUD for as far as they include visuals and the flourish when the bar is full, and the increased tracking rotation of all weapons. It did definitely need that. That was a really, I feel like that was like a combat, like kind of like meh up for me. So that's hopefully a combat yeah for me now. Looking at the situation for as far as they have the shout out for the great sword for when users were having a hard time landing a hit when they was aimed. So definitely moving on to the next issue where they have the allowed enemies to parry the weapon and the technique attacks. Also for as far as the light and heavy attacks where they were dealing incorrect portions, and they're going to go into a whole new system which is pretty cool. Light and heavy attacks where dealing the same damage were light attacks. It's just basically the same thing, but now it's going to be represented with a damage for as far as the attacks correctly scaling in the corresponding plus 20 damage. For example, they have the abbreviations for LA 100, then you have your LTA for 120, HA for your 150, and your HTA for 180. So light variance and heavy variance attacks for as far as what they used to deal was just 100. It's kind of crazy. You're just kind of doing the same thing, but kind of like trying to mash. That's why I like the light attack. It just felt so much better. But leave your comment down below. I would definitely like to hear what the community has to say for what they've been experienced with Godfall. Hopefully this isn't a dying game. I started playing this in the very beginning, but a lot more games came out and I need to get back to it. So definitely curious to hear what the community has to say. On top of the solved issues where the game could crash in an attempt to use the weapon techniques while doing the charged heavy attack, the updates in the rank 3 inside of there for the finest skill to allow the players to throw the projectiles with every quick turn. Previously, the quick turn would only trigger when staggered effect was off and cooldown. No, that was kind of annoying, but looking at now every quick turn where the throw dagger, regardless if staggered effects is available and apply to the stagger cooldown. Neat. All right, so they kind of sewed that one up, and you can see that the solved issues continued as the leveling up would not fail the weapon techniques for as far as the reset shield and the cooldown. Players could be knocked down performing weapon techniques, the leaping in the shield bashes, and scaled off might instead of the spirit when performing utilizing the secondary weapon. On top of the solved issues that came down from the longsword for as far as the northern technique during a level up would make a HUD permanently disappear. It's a hell of a magic trick. It almost seems like David Blaine should be there going, mind freak. Going on past that, we can see that the issues where spamming attacks during a longsword for the southern technique could bypass the timing attack window. On top of the issues where dual blades charged and the heavy attack would not trigger and the reliability for that, the final hits for the dual blades charged and the heavy would not be registered. Heavy attacks also go down where the pole arm comes into a situation of benefits where they were not hitting the timing attacks and the rank 5 bonus damage. On top of that, for what continues with the same weapon, the heavy timing attack and not triggering into the soul shatter damage, and looking at the heavy timing portion for not consuming the rampage of 500 damage. That's not cool. Not cool, dude. Included into the colored health of states on the players named tags for the multiplayers, you can see that this includes the flash indicators where sometimes players were getting hit. Looking at the multiplayers and the issues for abandoning a Dreamstone activity, as followers would create a placeholder mission in the Hollow map. Also looked at the solved multiplayer issues where the vocal line point would just overlap on members during a party in the cutscenes, and it would just be a whole mumbo jumbo of echoes and craziness. It sounded like a really big BART station. Now, as we dive into multiplayer fixes, it seems like there's a lot of stuff from the Tower of Trails, where the attempting of opening a chest when a player has insufficient keys, preventing another player from interacting inside of that other object at the same floor. It also comes down to the interaction portion with the same chest at the same time with some players. On top of that, it continues with the Solaris shield bar would appear to be full to some who died despite whenever the damage to the shield was sustained. Or as far as the multiplayer bugs that continue down this list, we look at when biting the solar shield bar would not appear in the update and it was fully broken, or the recharge. It continues down to the button prompt for the lingering after completion if the player spammed the indicator button. So if someone was just finger tapping the crap out of that, that was gonna be a bad day. Looking at top of that for the multiplayer list, that just continues to grow. The Lunaris AOE grab comes down to a portion for what would cause the players to levitate in a dodge direction. I mean, that's kind of cool, right? I mean, all namaste and stuff, but looking at past that, you can look at the loot, what ended up happening on tier 40 in certain game modes instead of scaling to their mission tier. So kind of a little bit more of a harder situation, total Borderlands-y kind of feel to it, where you're kind of like scaling levels within playing people and like more of like a Destiny run type, like I guess co-op feel to it. What I mean by that, so I mean that's kind of cool that they were adjusting that, because like that was kind of like one of the things that's, you don't want to have loot that's really ridiculously overscaled you can't use, makes it pointless. Solve the various multiplayer crashes and the issues due to the desync, on top of the adjusted animations that came down to the stop circle, and the animations continued with the subflare for the takedown finisher that it was a little bit not as dramatic as we wanted it to be for the ragged doll after death. Now, adjustments and animations continue for about another 5 situations for shields that snap into place when heavy blocks. The arching shield throw for as far as the including body and shoulder weight for as far as the throw of it, the long sword and the light attacks that come into the feel less floaty, on top of the portion of warriors in the battle cry and the walk circle. We also saw a situation for as far as the enemies and the suffering, and from that the stutters in their walk in the circle. We removed portions of animation on top of this as we kind of move past that and go to the other few fixes that do trail off on that, when you can see that the traits would not display immediately for as far as the stat cards that pull up. Animations also grab for Zamora, and where near her side would cause players to float. Levitation is just a big thing instead of her hand, I guess. So you're just like kind of like going like Iggy Piggy. What was that? Or Ziggy Piggy. Yeah, that was the thing from like Bill and Ted's. Moving on, where I start quoting freaking like some amazing excellent adventures. Solve some portions for animation for as far as the still sun hammer when looking at the swing wildly when in place down to throwing some fireballs, and for as far as the situation again for the lava bucket that would be unrealistic during the takedown animation. We also look at the situation of where the Nyack adapts for as far as where it would appear inside of the slide instead of the walking properly. So let's go ahead and slide down and we can see some more fixes. This is just one heck of a big update, honestly, as we can kind of see that the icons sometimes come down to blocking and the attacks in regular portions. We can see that it would cause enemies in the group and the animation syncs to unsync. Now immediately after placing the banner that would have situationally unavailable animation cancel at any time, the leveling up in animation would cancel other animations and reset the camera location. Very not cool if there's a narrative or you're in a battle. On top of the improved portions of the Nave Mesh and the spawn logic inside of the prevented immobilized portions to otherwise non-responsive enemies, which wouldn't be really fun. It's just like playing an NPC. It's just like, I don't know what to do. Improve the visual guardian for as far as the spirit portion of vision inside of the free roam activities. Red bonus objects come down to the portion of beams and the increased portion of size as we scroll down to see a little bit more. And take a good glimpse at the new particle effects that will be included inside of the guide near this beams. They include confirmation screen when attempting to exit the game, as well as included confirmation screen in the attempting reset of the skill grids, including the press and hold safety portion of the key that's attempting to abandon the Dreamstone. On top of that prompt where it ends the hunt mission for as far as which would allow players to choose between free roam and the return to the sanctuary. They also look at the portion of the VFX to help people inform the players in the object's importance, such as switches. On top of that situation, wait, there's wild switches like Nintendo switches in the wild? That'd be so cool. That like Gearbox was just giving those out. It's not. It's just me being a fanboy and wanting one for free. It'd be cool. Anyways, moving on. Daydreaming. Increase the portion of the players in the pickup radius and the responsiveness while sprinting to avoid backtracking. On top of the turning radius allowed during the super sprint before braking. Yeah, you hear that? Not good. On top of the situation, enjoying speed runs and top of those for the thrill portions of the realm. Those speed runs through the realms will no longer be a thrill that you can't hit down like Michael Jackson's Thriller. Yeah. Looking at the increased portions of the amounts for as far as the health and the training dummies, we look at the players and the collisions and the NPC summons. For as far as the I cannot be stopped, the line for as far as the Marcaros in the dialogue and the options while he was below 40%. This seems like a very rare fix to prevent the ironic death quote, "You will fall. You will fail Marcos." That's interesting. Very interesting. We can also see that there's some portions of what's going to happen for, again, the push and hold interaction and gathering nodes where they can be collected in a one button press. Pretty cool. On top of free roam were the timing post and the chess puzzle. Events could spawn on multiple floors if they located inside of buildings. On top of the multiplayers were second hit for the polearm light combo would not deal damage if performed too quickly. The issues were full health effects, like the found on the Red Dragon Trail polearm would function properly, and issues where crashes could occur when fighting solar flare portions of the Ravager in that situation, for as far as during the shrine of the Godsmith. Augments and the bonuses for as far as the display on the other augment stat cards, UI timers in the players for as far as such as burning would continue during the player's pause. Previously, you could pause and the game would debuff the timer and expire it. Unfortunately, that's pretty lame. The issues continue as they are solved in that situation for as far as the versions of mid bosses where the dropped in an increased amount of health. Not a good situation for the Globulius. For as far as the solved portions of the enclave, for as far as we would see in the inaccessible, for as far as the through inactive phase nodes when entering free roam after players hunt missions inside of the floating realm. Solved issues were based on a upgrade also for the items and the rewards on the same amount of the Electrum if you have salvaged. So there are a lot of fixes that are going to be more towards that salvaging thing that I hope that they kind of right round eventually. It'd be kind of cool to see these things, but boss music also comes into it where after it would still play right after boss shutdowns would come down to takedowns and the interactions were breached beforehand. Cinematics and the double rendering character modes and the models not working right. Clear enemies quickly with a high latency could cause an object not to appear, and the cloth weapon attachments would malfunction when re-entering a boss inside of the situation of the arena after dying. The issues were the cursed chest could produce a blinding light in the water realm on top of the dreamstones in the Solaris and the Markros, and for the situation of playing the unique combat music when engaged. Issues for as far as the dying tutorial when you could respawn you too far to sometimes be stuck in the middle of the air. Holy crap. Alright, well anyways, moving on past the situation of levitation yet again hitting the patch note again. The elevator prompt could fail and appear, preventing further progression. The issues have the enemies where we would see the properly portion of owners inside of the reduced portions of the VFX, and the VFX seems like it's an issue that they have not really grasped too well. I feel like they're trying to get it, but as this patch note, which is ridiculously long because Gearbox took a long time, and I appreciate everyone staying tuned and definitely filling this knowledge up because there's a lot of stuff that has changed and a lot of people are curious. The issues portions of the Commander's Mist where the wall would not fill to fit the arena's entrance. The issues also continued without a fix element that could roll secondary traits of a different element when enchanted. On top of that, the issues of leveling up removed the VFX from loot on the ground. The issues where the lower tier enemies could clash break with you, disrupting the combat flow. Looking at luminous orbs are not rendering properly. The opening of different difficulties in the menus will always highlight easy difficulty. It is highlighted currently as set when opening the difficulty menu. So it seems like there was a huge confusing mess with that. Everyone thought they were on different stuff and it was on cool stuff, but who would have known it would have been something like that? But looking on past that, as we kind of see the difficulties of how long this freaking patch note is, the place of the geometry could be found under certain portions of the Valor playthrough. You can look at the situation for as far as the placing of the banner. It can be canceled midway through the proc traits from the items when you are in the cooldown for the as far as the banner. Looking at the solved issues for as far as the spawn projectiles, example for gear would take the strange flight pattern to reach their targets, so it just looked really weird. Issues on top of that attacked for as far as the Xenon and top of the during of the portions of missions. We also looked at top of the situation where the jump to the phase nodes that stood under the instead of targeted phase nodes. So the nodes were a big issue. I mean, I can't help but say that, like, it seems like this could have been a lot shorter if they kind of like summed up like node and just like consolidated some stuff, but I kind of get where they're going. Gearbox is insanely thorough when it comes down to the first few patches they put out, and this is like their 5th and 6th patch rolling out, and almost about like give or take about a month since this game's been directly out. Solved issues where the players could experience inside of the hiccups were the first opening onto the Lunara. Also, the polar arms comes down to the thrown destroy targets through these sealed doors, preventing further progression. The issues for as far as purchasing rank of the skills caused some maximum rank skills to be partially reset in the next launch of game. Totally lame after you've already, invested your time into it. The issues inside of resources other than Electrum, coming down to that situation of what you can come down to the what would be summoned in a single item for as far as the loot feed you would hope would be. Now it's hopefully. Looking at the other portions of the resources will now show only once the loot feed for their total amount is acquired, like the Electrium. And on top of that situation, we also look at the solved portions of the Sunflare orbs that could sometimes spawn outside of the safe zone, becoming inaccessible. On top of that, it comes down to the Ravager that would not play in the unique music yet again, engaging inside of the air realm and the gauntlets. We looked at the issues of XP percentage, the factor of X and the health recovery, coming down to it for as far as a 25% below that. Boons were providing the same amount of recovery. Previously it was 65, 80, 112. On top of that, the health recovery was gaining about 75 for as far as what could be described. Solved issues for as far as the number heal, for as far as what we would see for the reset and lost players are go. Now let's go ahead and scroll down and see hopefully an end to this. We can see that the issues for the bright slider, where it can move were not completely. The float recovery came down to a portion for specific chests, leaping into the shield bash for the trigger and the soul shatter damage. Also where players were locked into the intangible portion of performing a parry. Also where it looks at the sudden stop as soon as entering the super point of sprint. And the polarity attack and the HUD would not update correctly after the players would just die. Rampage, and coming down to the VFX yet again, the weapon portion of what trails into would not behave properly. A few traits that came from that was the weapon for as far as swapped offhand did not trigger. The Rampage would not adopt the VFX in the weapon trails. On top of that situation, for as far as what we can see is the original weapon remains on top of that for the Rampage expiration. Now on top of that, for as far as what would be retained would be the VFX permanently. Now looking at for as far as solved issues for resistant skills in the nodes and the display in the incorrect amount for as far as what is in each rank, we can also look at the treasure chest for respawning party members dropping off for as far as the parties. Looking at top of that for as far as the champions that may not take downs for as far as prompting and preventing further progressions, and then solved an issue where Zamora's cloth physics could go crazy and spaz out. We can see that the solved issues for the environment wind strength is not applying properly during the tutorial. Solved an issue for as far as the lashing portion of the reflections, the augments. That portion is just not looking that good. Yeah. When damage is increased, is not applying at all. On top of that situation, for as far as the issues in the rank 5 for the weak points and the skills for the shock and the produce of what would be reapplying the damage and the modifiers, resulting in an astronomical number. Previously, the shock wave would deal 50% original damage stacked on top of the modifiers, including weak damage again. Now, weak portions of the shock will come down to the correct portion of 50% inside of there. The original hits now only apply to the damage that is intended, so they're trying to get that dialed in. For the various portions of the disappearing environments due to the LOD and portions of the view distance draw and the issues, solved some various environmental collisions and the issues across the realms, solved some variety portions that come down to some glitches for as far as bosses and the introduction of cinematics. The VFX yet again comes down to the indicator for loot and pickups. Also on top of that, for as far as the text string for not being translated from English to the proper appropriate languages, apparently. As we scroll down and finally start to see the glimpse of the end of this freaking patch notes before it almost ends up 30 minutes like a damn TV series of freaking crap. Solved various portions of spell for as far as what ends up being grammatic errors inside of there. It happens, we're human. Moving on. Waypoints for as far as the path issues that would be briefly pointed in players in a wrong direction during the missions. Solved various waypoints for as far as the pathing issues that would point players to the furthest object and enemies instead of one of the close ones. Updates in the equipments for as far as the screen to have gear, and for as far as the portions of just looking at weapon models. So to sum that up, because I mean, I'm really trying to get this done. This is like, I feel like the very nitty gritty for hollow maps and the current selection for as far as Marcos and the portions of the encounter for no longer for as far as the channel corrupt portions of stuns. Very easy after engaging when he dies, it kind of screws up. Confusion on the rampage UI gauge where the players weren't getting down to the updates of the SFX for the spending skills for as far as the point guide. On top of that, for as far as the grid for as far it comes down into, again, the skill grid comes into a portion where they match the players, the current, the custom, the key binding portions. And on top of that, the UI update displays the material that basically is able to salvage the gear with. Sweet, right? Now this is the easy part. Solved issues where multiplayers on PlayStation 5 weren't getting the actual invites. I've had that happen. Now it automatically kind of goes to this coolness. Solved the issues where the audio would be lost, resuming after the game inside of the rest mode, and in the issues where people were starting the games without the internet, the connection, then reconnecting and the players were not able to load. In multiplayer, I noticed that me and my friend had to turn off the game before and boot it back in, and it worked. Now PC, as we basically finish this up, inside of the salvage, the shortcut is in the keyboard, bonus the space bar. On top of that, sprint toggle for the option on the mouse for as far as keyboard. Solved issues for as far as the issues and highlight for the difference inside of the augments for the controller and the mouse that would render two stat cards at the same time. There's also some ports for the escape key that would come close to all the menus instead of backing out of the current sub menu. Now, for as far as that, which is just closing a conundrum on that situation, we can see that the stat cards would not update when navigating the arrow or the gamepad left stick after clicking back inside of the game in the window for as far as the mouse. They did a lot of hard work on the key and mouse pad, and like that's good because I feel like that's probably a really big thing for the PC Master Race. They're like, damn it, if we can't use our tools, we can't play this cool game. Solved an issue for as far as what the windowed and full screen settings showing the wrong resolution. Variety fixes also come into the incorrect mouse again button and the icon of the display in the menu, and then the update for as far as the mouse button for the RMB, LMB icons for the better display. The target button is clicked. The update with the swords are based on the player's feedback, which gets down to the point is, everyone, leave a comment down below. We spent 30 minutes together. Cheers. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate all the hard time. Have a happy holidays. Leave a comment, and I would definitely love to hear what you have to say about the game's new update, what you feel about this. Like, share, and subscribe. Absolutely free. Helps me out as a creator, and I am out of breath, and I'll leave it at that. Later, everyone.